Welcome to the February 17, 2021 meeting of the Lake Bluff Joint Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals. And welcome to the board members. It's been another month. It's gone by quickly, obviously. Call to order. Roll call, please.
Certainly. Just one moment. All right, Member Burns.
Here.
Member Danley, unfortunately, is absent. She's feeling a bit ill this evening. Member Fisher.
Here.
Member Miller.
Here.
Member Ryder.
Here.
Member Russell.
Here.
And Chair Peters.
Here.
You have a quorum, and I don't believe I forgot anybody.
Oh, thank you.
Very good.
And before we get into agenda item number 2, I would like to welcome Deb Fisher as our newest member to the commission. She'll be a tremendous asset, and I'm glad she's on board.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item number 2, we allocate 15 minutes during our meeting to address any issues that come from the public, allocating 3 minutes for each participant. Is there anyone out from the public tonight that wants to present during public comment time?
Yeah. And if you're joining us this evening, you can use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, or you can raise your hand if you'd like for us to recognize you. Otherwise, we can continue on with our agenda.
All right. Hearing none, let's proceed with agenda item number 3. Consideration of the January 20, 2021 PCZBA regular meeting minutes. Have all the commissioners had an opportunity to review the minutes?
I would note, Mr. Chairman, that we circulated a revised copy last night. I know Member Russell did point out one minor change to that copy as well, specifically on page 4. Number 1 refers only to lot 2 of the development.
Okay. And that change has been entered into the record, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Any other modifications or other revisions from the commissioners? Hearing none, could we have a motion to approve, please?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there
Second.
a roll call vote, I guess?
That's correct, sir. Just one moment. All right, Member Burns.
Aye.
Member Fisher.
I'll abstain because I wasn't part of it at that point. Is that appropriate?
You have the right to abstain if you so desire. You also have the ability to vote for like.
Okay, 4.
Okay. Member Miller.
Aye.
Member Ryder.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
And Chair Peters.
Aye. All right, agenda item number 4, public hearing 104 North Skokie Highway, special use permit for Bedola's Auto Body. Mr. Cole, if you wanted to give us an overview, please.
Certainly, and I'll note we do have for sure the applicant here to provide some testimony if we like. In short, we as staff, we hope this is a relatively simple item. There was an existing auto body business in this tenant space that was purchased by a new owner. That owner, as far as we can tell, did what they were supposed to do. Sought improvements to their property, sought a business certificate of occupancy. At that time, we discovered that, at least for some time, this business had not been had not received a special use permit when it originally at some point moved into this property. It's been there for, in our research, a considerable period of time. It probably was elsewhere on a property owned by the same landlord in the same vicinity and moved at some point maybe in the 2000s. So we don't have an exact timeline. I'll just emphasize that we've received no complaints about this business. We have no reason to believe there was any attempt to evade the zoning code or anything like that here. What we've just asked and have worked with the applicant to bring you is an application for a special use permit that would clear up this issue and make sure that they are operating lawfully from this time forward. So in this case, we've given you, I would note, what I would call a clean draft ordinance for a special use permit. We haven't recommended any special conditions given the circumstances here. There have been some times, not others, where perhaps this group has applied restrictions about the hours of operation or how vehicles are queued or are stored, things like that. Again, given just the pre-existing circumstances, the unique configuration of this lot, this is a second building set away from a street, and et cetera. We haven't recommended those to you for inclusion. If you should recommend approval, certainly we can prepare those if you would like them in your recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions from the commissioners, or we can have a brief discussion or presentation from the petitioner.
I'd like to make one comment. The company that moved into that building was actually at 417. You look on the map, and they were there for quite some time. It's an auto body shop.
Okay.
So I don't think this was a big deal moving over. They already had permission to be in that area. Just as a clarification of where this company was, and probably, as you said, moved within the same owner of the property.
Okay. Thank you.
And Glenn, I have a question.
Sure.
You attached, or maybe they attached, the Architectural Board of Review minutes for their sign approval. And that document seemed to indicate that the parcel under consideration included all of the, that second larger building there to the west. That's got the addresses 97, 101, and 102. But the submittal for this, our package that we're looking at, definitely implies it's just the parcel with the 104 building. What's the reality?
Right. Give me just one moment. I'm pulling up the county's addressing map here.
And then the second question while you're looking, is it not correct that there's at least one apartment, if not two, in the little building that is located right below the the duplicate number 97s on page 2 of our packet?
Yeah, I'm not sure if what the occupancy is of that structure. I'd always thought it was offices. If you told me it was an apartment, I guess that's a little surprising. It's a very industrial area, but I could see that, I suppose.
And obviously I would be asking, because if there are tenants moving in and out there, at one point it was definitely a residence. I would think we would want to have some sort of restrictions on the hours, considering this auto body place is 30 feet away.
Certainly, yeah. And I would, if we knew about that situation, definitely that would change our recommendation. I would also say, though, that, a residence is certainly not a permitted use in this district. And so that would be something I would weigh as well. To your
Member Russell, I have a question. I'm not sure I understand your thought process about different buildings. The sign is in front of 104, the new sign. I'm not sure where 101 and 97 come in.
So my understanding of what the ARB did was that they considered those two buildings as a whole in deciding to allow 104 to have two signs on it. So because they needed to have two public access streets, and 104 only has a second public access street if you count the sister building to the west. And so I think that's why we see the red outline, because they did something to consider those two parcels or together for purposes of the signage. That's what I read to be the case.
Yeah, that's correct. At least I read it that way also. And so I'm just asking, what is the lot that we're talking about here? Because if we're not going to have any restrictions on where people can park other than on the lot, is the lot just that lot 7 where 104 is, or does it include all four sides of that larger building that was part of the ABR package, the 101, 102, 97 building?
Member Russell.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Am I allowed to talk or not? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the voice you're hearing is Omar Bedolis, who's the proprietor. Omar, let me just answer this one question briefly, and we can
Okay,
let you
no
in.
worries.
Yeah, Member Russell, to your question, I would ask. I'm not sure on the history of that ABR discussion. We just included it for your reference of the other improvements being made to the property. If you consider both lots as one zoning lot, you solve the problem of not having public access. You create a problem of having two buildings on a single zoning lot, which is also prohibited. So we haven't looked that closely at it. What I would tell you is that we based our legal notice and the ordinance and et cetera on the survey we were presented with the application, which is page 28 of your packet, and that just shows that easterly lot. And there's nothing in the zoning ordinance, if this was considered the zoning lot, which is weird here, the non-conforming lot of record and the non-conforming use provisions, I believe, would let you continue this auto body use in this property without any other variations or anything like that.
Omar, if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Omar Bedoya. Address, I'm sorry, would you like the address of the shop or of my house?
Oh, the shop will be fine.
Yeah, 104 Skokie Valley Road, Lake Bluff, Illinois, 60044.
Okay. And we'll swear you in, Omar. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right. Please proceed, Omar, with your presentation.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Basically, just like Glenn was mentioning, my father has been working under the previous owner, Chris, for quite a while, and it was one of those things where my father wanted to open up his own business, but obviously opening up a business comes with risk, and it's pretty scary. And then we got the opportunity with Chris saying that he wanted to retire. So, we took ownership and just kind of wanted to continue with it. Of course, we wanted to do everything right. That's why when I was saying, I'm trying to go through the village, make sure everything's right and up to code, no troubles or anything like that. You guys brought up the fact that 104 is like a one building. I won't lie to you. I don't know the whole history. I do know the person who is renting it. I don't know him personally. I guess he's been there for quite a while. He does another thing on his own side, stuff like that. But I believe the previous owner of the whole building rented out that for him. But other than that, yeah, we're just trying to do whatever we can to make this right, and just continue forward and make this business known and all that.
So you're seeking a special use permit for the operation of the business, Omar, and you've submitted your application setting forth the answers to the standards for special use. Is that correct?
Correct.
And we'll adopt and incorporate by reference each of those, each of the statements set forth therein. And this was an existing auto body or mechanical shop?
And it's just an auto body, yes.
Auto body, okay. Anything else you'd like to tell the commissioners, Omar?
No, I'm fine right now. Like I said, I just want to make sure I do everything right by the book and everything right by you guys. Like I said, I try to do my part. We did switch like the paint material into water based, so it's better for the environment and all that. I'm all for doing it the right way and helping the whole environment and all that.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. Commissioners, any questions for the petitioner?
George Russell, I guess circling back, I would certainly feel more comfortable if there was some sort of time limit placed on the operations. I don't know if Omar can suggest time limits with which he can work, because if there is an apartment in that one building, it could date back all the way to before that property was even annexed into the village. So I would think we would want a time limit on an auto body operation. And then number two, looking at the aerial photograph on page 2 of the packet, it looks like there's quite a few collection of cars to the south of the building. I don't have any problem with auto body parking there, but I wouldn't want it to expand westerly out in front of 101, where there's cars waiting to be fixed. I would think we would want to limit the parking outside to due north and due south of the building per the Lot 7 depiction that's been provided, and exclude the area in front of 101-97. That's why I was asking what lot are we really considering here?
The apartment itself, again, I don't know much of the history itself. I know that was there because the previous owner of the whole lot itself, his name was Sal, but he passed away. I believe he made that into an apartment or something like that. I don't know the details. That's why I don't want to lie to you. But I do know the previous owner, he is residing there for the time being until he's going to move or something along those lines. And then operation-wise, we're only there from Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. And I've been to the apartment myself. We don't make any noise. And like I said, I'm close with the owner of that place right now. So any, disturbance or anything like that, I always try to fix it. But so far, he's not complaining or anything like that. He's completely fine. And like I said, we're only working from 8 to 5 from Monday to Friday. And then normally our parkings, we park our cars inside the shop itself. We don't block any access way or anything like that as well.
Omar, what are all the cars due south of your building in the aerial?
All the cars in the south, you said?
Yes. If cars are waiting to be worked on, if the business picks up, why would you not be wanting to park cars there or north of the building? I assume that's what that exhibit is, where you were proposing 4 outdoor parking spaces on the north side of the building. I'm just trying to get
right. We definitely do have parking spots on the front of our shop itself. Normally, the way we avoid from being overpacked, we do per appointment. So we usually like to bring in cars in and out, and we only handle as much as we can because I don't want to bombard the whole parking lot, leave the cars outside parked like that. Also because I don't want it to look sloppy, and I also don't want to leave the cars outside because they're customers' cars. So I want to make sure they're inside and locked. So normally I do everything by appointment, and we like to bring in cars in and out and not keep them sitting around or leave them outside as well.
Okay, well, I remember during some period of time, and it probably wasn't your operation, but
Mhm.
the area around 417, 421, where the previous auto body shop was,
Oh,
we had dozens of cars parked all over the property. And so I
Gotcha.
personally, I'm in favor of putting a time limit on the operations of like 7 to 7, and no Sundays, and that the parking, any parking when it does occur for either vehicles to be serviced or vehicles done, or your employees, that they be in the area due north or due south of the building within your lot number 7. That would be my recommendation. The other commissioners can weigh in.
Thank you, Member
I'm done.
Russell. Member Miller.
I guess I'm,
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead, Ms. Ryder.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to just give some thought to, putting as little administrative burden on this organization as we can, understanding what George is saying and the concern about the apartment that is apparently there. I'd like to see if we can rest on already existing rules in order to ensure that we don't impose more burdens on business than we have to. The notion being that we want to do what we need to allow businesses to thrive in our organization where it doesn't impinge on other people's rights and in our company or our city, not our organization. So I wonder if there are other, perhaps the attorney could tell us whether there are other ways to correct any problem should it arise, other than us putting something restricting in the ordinance itself.
Yeah, in the village code, there are, general nuisance provisions. I'd have to look and do it quickly, but about noise violations. Generally speaking, typical work would not rise to the level of a nuisance. So, one thing if somebody's blaring horns at 2 a.m, but if there's work going on, it would have to be pretty egregious to rise to the level of a violation of our code. So the real question is whether or not you think there is a sufficient issue that would necessitate, in order to meet our standards, putting on our restrictions on the business or other types of restrictions on its operations. So you are free to do so if you think it's required in order for the applicant to meet the standards.
And Ms. Ryder, I would add to Ben's excellent explanation. Specific to the light industry district, there's a set of what are called performance standards. So those are requirements applicable whether or not you're special use to noise. There's some specific criteria around sound level, so it can't exceed 75 decibels at any time. There's a table of octave bands, essentially where higher pitched noises would need to are subject to a more restrictive decibel limit. And again, requirements around smoke or odors, glare, heat, vibrations. These are fairly common provisions that we have in the books as well.
So I'm not familiar with what hours restrictions there are elsewhere in the light industrial district. I'm just pointing out that this particular lot is in such a peculiar, out of the way spot that if we are going to be encouraging businesses to be in the village, that we take as light a hand on regulatory requirements as we can within reason of protecting others. I
believe perhaps Village Administrator Irvin is trying to join us. I apologize.
Oh,
Maybe, maybe not.
He popped in, he's gone
He
again.
did.
Omar,
Well, while he's
go ahead,
while
Pete.
he's wait. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just,
Well, I was just gonna echo Member Ryder's comments. I think given that we're talking about a light industrial district, that there's been no complaints, that we have noise ordinances already in place. I guess I just don't see the need to put in additional conditions at this point. Yeah, I just agree.
I too agree that as written and proposed, I would go with what's there. I think the owner of the business, Omar, seems quite responsible. Sounds like he wants to do good business, and I think that will reflect in his business and his business practices. I don't think we need to put more into this than what's already there.
Yeah, I would agree with that also.
okay. I think I have an appreciation where George is coming from with respect to the conditions, but considering the factors such as the location, such as Omar's presentation, I too, in this instance, am comfortable with no additional conditions.
Okay, just one last comment that I don't think it's very restrictive to have a requirement that the owner of the business has to keep the cars on his own lot. That's all. And if we want him to be able to work 24/7, 7 days a week when there's an apartment within 30 feet, I spoke my piece. Not trying to, I agree we don't want to be overly restrictive, but a few regulations to protect.
So George, in regards to the parking on other people's lots, wouldn't that be generally enforceable in any case? Do we need to write that in? I thought that would be just kind of a general kind of rule that you are only able to park on your own property.
Well, I defer to the village attorney if there's more substance to it, but I would think commonly, right, you have a whole property owned by one landlord, and a landlord might say, sure, you can park some of your spare cars over here and over there, and that would just be worked out among the landlord and tenants. So I would be surprised if that were to happen, but to Member Russell's point, certainly that's a different look if partially operable or inoperable vehicles were to be stored, in the line of sight as you're coming onto or off of Route 41.
Omar, are you comfortable with the proposed parking restriction or condition? That it be limited to your property?
Well, like I said, to ease it, like I said, I only park in front, and that's normally when I am during working business. When I am closing the doors, I do put in the cars inside it, and if I do have to, but I don't see it ever happening, but if I do have to park, it will be on front of my lot itself. I wouldn't park on the side or get in the accessway or bother anything like that of sorts. But I definitely don't see this being a problem because, like I said, I try to do my diligence on bringing in cars and bringing them out at the same time, so I'm never overpacked or leaving cars outside as well. Because again, I want to make sure the customers feel safe that their cars are going to be locked in and completely safe.
Thank you. During the course of an average day, Omar, how many cars do you work on?
Average, usually like 2 to 3.
Okay, and how many employees?
We have 3 right now, sir.
Okay. All right. Nothing further from my perspective right now. Any further discussion among the commissioners? And in this instance, we're a recommending body, so the record will certainly reflect George's concerns with respect to possible hours of operations and possible parking-related restrictions. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the plan as stated, without restriction.
Second?
Thank you. Any further discussion? If we could have a roll call vote, Mr. Cole, please.
Certainly. So on this vote and from here forward, the order is random. Member Danley is absent. Member Ryder?
Yes.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Fisher?
Aye.
Member Russell?
In the spirit of former member Jenny Alexander, I vote no.
Member Miller?
Aye.
Member Burns?
Aye.
And Chair Peters?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Omar,
Thank you.
I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. There's a couple other steps that this item will go through here in the coming weeks. But we can speak tomorrow about that. So thank you for joining us.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good night, you guys.
Thank you. Agenda item number 5, public hearing, 354 East Woodland Road, residential variation. Mr. Cole, if you could give the commission an overview, please.
Certainly, and if you would allow, Mr. Chairman, I will actually allow Samantha Lennox, the village's administrative intern, to provide that overview for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm just going to share my screen to show the proposed site plan. If you wouldn't mind, Glenn.
You're good to go.
Thank you. Okay, so here's the proposed addition, but first I'll start with the original site plan of the first floor. And this property, the homeowners are seeking a total gross floor area variation in order to extend their kitchen and breakfast nook. The proposed addition will have an area of 19.7 square feet and will exceed the current floor area ratio by this amount. The allowable floor area for this property is 2,880 square feet, and the current built floor area is 2,988 square feet. The addition would increase the built floor area to 3,107.7 square feet. Currently, the floor area ratio is already non-compliant by 3.75%, and this addition will exceed what is currently allowed by 4.43%. Since this addition is less than 25% of the applicable standard, the board has the authority to grant or deny this variation. And I believe the applicant and architect are present at this meeting as well.
Thank you, Samantha. Petitioner, you are present?
Yes, my name is Jonathan Stuck. I'm president of Merge Point Architects and Builders, and I am the architect for this project.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Noelle Beckman. I am the owner of 354 East Woodland.
Do you both solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Please proceed.
So, as was previously mentioned, the addition is just under 20 square feet. There's an existing niche in the back corner of the house, and we want to expand into that. So essentially bumping up 2 feet to envelop that existing niche. The house itself and the detached garage, when I ran the calculations for the bulk, was already over the allowed amount, and we're seeking relief on just adding essentially a 20-foot, 1-story simple addition to the house. The addition is going here, as was mentioned previously. proposed addition is essentially this area here. And what that'll allow us to accomplish on the interior is to keep the existing breakfast table in its current location and allow proper circulation space around. We're also introducing a kitchen island to kind of help with the flow of the whole space, because the existing layout, they just have a peninsula here, and then the kitchen, or the sink and everything's over here. I call this kind of a no man's land. It's quite a distance between here, and it's really not usable for any other purpose than circulation. The other thing that we're fighting is like the refrigerator and the pantry are located back in this narrow area. I mean, literally there's about 35 inches of clearance between the front of the refrigerator and the wall there. So in going with the new layout, we're able to move the refrigerator more into the active area of the kitchen and kind of keep the secondary pantry and kind of a demi-butler pantry type function back here. As far as the elevations, this is the view looking from the east. So the hatching pattern here is indicating the cedar siding, cedar shingle siding. This is really just highlighting what is new construction. And then this is a small little shed type roof that comes off. So literally, this is the existing plane of that wall, and we're just extending it through. The view from the rear of the yard, you would just literally see this 2-foot bump out and the roof at a 1-story height. And we're introducing a larger sliding glass door with some side lights and transoms. So as far as the exterior imagery of the building, it's really about as simple as it can get. The project area is not visible from the public right of way, and it's really only visible from the neighbor directly to the east. There is a 6-foot high solid fence separating the two properties, so the visual impact should be minimized to the for the neighbor to the east. So really, that's essentially all there is to this. So I would be interested if you had any questions in regards to our standards for variation responses, or had any technical questions.
If you could go through the standards for variation, John, that would be great.
Yes. So in terms of the practical difficulty or hardship, I would mention it that is, we're looking at it as a difficulty. So the kitchen is really long, really narrow, and really congested back here. So we're trying to rectify that while beautifying the inside of the house. So by building this addition, as I mentioned before, we get to move the refrigerator more into the active area of the kitchen and introduce an island which integrates more into the kitchen rather than bridging between the kitchen and the family. So in my opinion, the original layout was pretty inefficient. This is a relatively newer home as well. It was built in 1998. So I think the new layout, maintaining the clearances around it and not, being excessive with the use of the space, we tried to minimize the impact of the addition. So on the unique physical condition, kind of related again, the layout of the house, the existing house, and the fact that our actual property size is a few 300 square feet below the current minimum lot size for that zoning lot. So we're already kind of fighting, allowable buildable space to begin with right off the bat. Originally this project was envisioned as an interior remodeling. So through the course of the design solutions, we really felt that the only way to make the kitchen remodel make sense was to add this bump far as the, not merely a special privilege, once again, with a newer home, we're just looking for, in a modern home, more of a modern kitchen layout and amenities that is common to a modern home. Code purposes, we are meeting all other aspects of the code. Building coverage is under, impervious surfaces out under, and really we only are solely seeking for the bulk variation. In regards to public health and safety, there is absolutely no effect, in my opinion, on that. So I don't know if Noel would like to chime in on any of those.
Thanks, Jonathan, and thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I would say the only thing I would add to the practical comment is the current refrigerator and pantry cannot be opened at the same time. That might seem a little silly, but it is a real challenge in the kitchen to utilize the refrigerator and the pantry in the current layout. And as you can imagine, with a busy family of 4, it can get a little congested back there in that little hallway when everyone's trying to make dinner and get food out of the refrigerator. We really need to move the refrigerator because of that congestion, and the only place to move the refrigerator without removing the bathroom is to move it over next to the other side of the sink, which requires us to bump out that space a little bit just so that we have a place to put the refrigerator that's not kind of in that back hallway. So that's really kind of the practical hardship and use of the space that Jonathan and I and my husband Sam landed on. Once we did not intend to do this originally. We originally were just intending on, replacing cabinets and that type of thing. We just couldn't make it work, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, who'd like to start?
All right. I appreciate what you're going through. I've done additions myself, and space does become a premium, especially in this town. The fact that your lot is smaller than everybody else's is unfortunate, but I'm not sure that's truly a reason to add an addition. That said, I think your addition fits perfectly well in the space. It is not intruding on anything. Have you talked to your neighbor at all?
Unfortunately not. Our neighbor is not living in her home right now, so we were not able to speak with her.
Okay. I'm not sure it's going to really be a hardship to the neighbor since it's not really extending the house out beyond its limits. The other question I have is the air conditioning unit is there. Where do you plan to move that?
Jonathan, do you want to answer?
Yes. Let me show you a picture of that. So right now, the air conditioning unit is really right here. We're literally just gonna bump it out and probably right here. So I've already looked at the setback that needs to be required there. And it should have just enough space to get the unit installed and maintain the required setback.
Okay, that was my concern.
Thank you, Member Miller.
So essentially, right there.
Member Burns.
Yeah, so I echo some of Member Miller's comments. I don't think it's a huge hardship when you think about remodeling a kitchen, but I do agree that the lot size does, create some restrictions. And then in addition, there are definitely functional constraints with that kitchen. I totally appreciate that, that trying to work within that, although it may be an inconvenience, there are some challenging geometry to work around. So I do appreciate that and the limitations that you have within that layout. And that in combination with how minimal this is in terms of a variance, and more importantly, the area or the location within your lot, and that someone from the front walking by wouldn't see this bulk. It really would be your neighbor to the side. You know, I'm not too concerned about it.
Thank you, Member Miller. Member Fisher?
Yeah, I think that visually it doesn't really seem to change the look of the house from the street and everything. I do wish that the neighbor was able to voice any opinion, or had been able to voice an opinion. I would be careful to question about the air conditioning to make sure that it really does stay outside of, you know, not into the setbacks and such, but otherwise I'd be okay with it as well.
Thank you, Member Fisher. Member Ryder?
Yeah, I echo all of those statements and just commend the homeowner and the architect for not overreaching, sort of doing what they need to do to make it functional. And with that in mind, I'd be in favor of this.
Thank you, Member Ryder. Member Russell?
I concur with all the other comments that the other members have made about this. I don't really have any issues. I'm just wondering if staff researched why this newer home was already over, or was there a previous minor variation granted?
Yeah, it's been a while since we've looked at this one. I'm trying to recall. Ms. Lennox, do you recall off
That's
the top
okay.
of your head? Okay.
This was wondering, and just a comment for the architect, you know, if you start doing a lot of work in the village, there are many lots in the village, particularly on the east side, that are under the minimum zoning district size, and please don't rely on that fact for moving forward with variation requests, because home sizes are based on the actual lot size, not on the zoning district size. But otherwise, I have no problems at all. It's tucked in very nicely and will tremendously improve the interior.
Yeah, number of excellent comments. I just have one question for the petitioner. Any potential impact on drainage?
No, the side yard along there is basically dead level. We will not have any back pitch towards the addition, nor will we be increasing the drainage flow to the east into the neighbor yard. So I say, you know, we're meeting the impervious requirements. We're going to maintain the existing grade, so we should have no impact in that matter.
All right, thank you.
Jonathan, you would have this. We have a drain there underground. We've had a drain installed along the entire side of the home, so that all of the water that's coming, anything that's coming off of the gutter, is in a fully like a French drain, and is draining to the backyard in where we have the giant drainage into the storm sewer. So we already have the water is directed from the side yard into the storm sewer.
Yes, the downspouts, the existing downspouts are going into an underground system currently.
Correct.
So we would not be adding any more downspouts.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion among the commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion, please?
Motion to approve the proposal.
Second, Member Russell.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Certainly. Member Fisher.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Member Ryder.
Aye.
Member Burns.
Aye.
Member Miller.
Aye.
Chair Peters.
Aye,
Motion carries.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Have a good night.
Hello, Jonathan.
Hi, Dr. Miller.
Nice to see you.
All right.
There's no conflict of interest in that one. There's no one.
He's an excellent doctor.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 6, public hearing, short-term rental regulations amendment. Mr. Cole, if you could give an overview to the commission, please.
Certainly. So in short, back in, throughout 2017 and 2018, the village invested a great deal of study and deliberation into crafting some short-term rental regulations. That was ultimately went through a process that included time with the Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals, time with the subcommittee of the Village Board of Trustees, a morning Saturday workshop of the Village Board of Trustees, and et cetera, and ultimately led to this limited time period pilot program. So the pilot was originally set to expire in 2020. At that time, the village board referred to this body, and then this body recommended to the village board a 1-year extension. So again, we had an initial trial period of 2 years of these rules that led to a 1-year extension. Now we're at 3 years. The village, and that expiration date is coming up again here in a few months. Earlier in January, I believe I'm right in saying, yes, the village board again discussed this pilot program as well as some others in the village, and at that time had a considerable amount of discussion about really if it should continue, if and how it should continue the pilot programs. And by that, I don't necessarily mean the idea of discontinuing them. I more refer to the discussion started, as you'll see in the minutes, around the idea of doing a 1-year or a 2-year extension. And really from that point, the question was raised if it was really a prudent use of this body's time and the village board's time to continue to reevaluate this annually, and also if it was promoting community conflict to continue to reevaluate this annually. So based on that discussion, again, as you'll see in the minutes, the committee of the whole worked through, the village board reviewed and referred to you again an ordinance. This makes no substantive changes except to strike the expiration date that exists in the code today. So instead of short-term rentals, those regulations evaporating, instead of that use being prohibited, again, as of a certain date, it would just continue as an indefinite regulation of the village, the same as many of our other zoning regulations, perhaps subject to change in the future, or perhaps not. So I would note that when the time for certainly we should hear public testimony and et cetera before the commissioners deliberate. When the proper time comes, Member Danley was feeling ill, was unable to join us, but did write to me briefly and asked that I share those comments with the board. And so I would like to, I suppose, if you allow it, Mr. Chairman, we'll share those at the appropriate time. But,
most certainly.
I believe that would.
Can I get one clarification, please?
Sure.
I get one clarification. Is our only charge tonight changing the renewal process? Is there anything in what we're doing tonight is changing the policy?
I would answer that question in 2 ways. So what the village board referred to you as an ordinance that only changes the expiration date. This public hearing is about the regulations. And so if they didn't ask you to do this, but if you have other recommendations you would make about these, you're not in the wrong for having that discussion. At least as far as our notice is concerned.
Now. We're voting on extension or permanency.
I wouldn't say permanent. Again, you could change these in the future, but yes, the draft ordinance you have would just delete that expiration date.
Okay, thank you.
Member Miller, as I interpret the charge from the village council, my impression is just as Mr. Cole indicated, that the charge is to explore whether or not we want to recommend an extension, either a finite extension or an indefinite extension. I think for a number of reasons, I'm not sure the timing would be appropriate to explore possible modifications at this time. I think we're still working our way, obviously, through the pandemic, but going forward, we're gonna work our way through an election process, I believe, in April or May. And I think historically, this has been somewhat of a contentious area of discussion, as you will definitely recall. And so from my perspective, I would urge the commission to explore simply that limited charge during tonight's, or after tonight's public hearing. And who will be presenting tonight?
Yes, I haven't seen anyone willing to comment from the public. Oh, we do have one right there. So if we're ready to begin that part of it, of the hearing, I should say, we'll take just a moment. We'll start with Miss Patricia Havern, and we'll go from there. If you're interested in speaking, if you can just make yourself known by using the raise hand button or the Q&A button there at the bottom of your screen, we'll take those in the order that they come in.
Yes, for any witness, obviously, we must swear you in, so if you could state your name for the record, and then we'll swear you in.
Ms. Havern, you are you're
Think
able
Ms.
to turn
Havern's
on your
on mute.
mic. Yeah, and you're able to turn on your video if you'd like to speak to the
Oh,
board.
there we go. Got it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good. Hi, how you doing? Okay,
Before you get started,
I'm
Ms.
assuming
Havern,
that you
we just want to swear you in first, if we could.
okay.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, please proceed.
Well, I sent you some information in the packet that's attached to the agenda. I saw that it was there. It's time to move forward on this. You know my thoughts. I'm here to answer any questions you have. It's a property rights issue. And there hasn't been any problems for how many years has it been? Quite a number. And the idea was, oh my goodness, we can't have Airbnb in Lake Bluff, and yet there are some in unincorporated under Lake Bluff, and they've been doing very well. I'm happy for them, these entrepreneurs that are being successful. I think it's great, and there hasn't been any problems unless somebody can give me information to the contrary. There's been no police reports. There's been nothing. So why are you even considering a permanent ordinance for the pilot program when A, there's no information, and B, there's never been any problem? And I think it's something that it's the way that it is, and we should look at ways to either, well, you know my thoughts. I sent you the information. I documented it. It's up to you. You've got the ability to either yay or nay, and you know, it's just an interesting kind of scenario. You know, I called Lake Forest and I'm like, hey, you know, do you use a monitoring service? I called all around. Do you use a monitoring service? And nobody does. And Lake Forest says, no, we don't allow them. And I'm like, wait a second. There's 3 of them in your town. They're doing great. They're great. I think it's great that you just don't care. I mean, you really just turned away and said, hey, there's no problem. Let them occur. So I don't know what you're after. I don't know what you want and what I can provide in order to move this forward to give people their property rights back.
Well, we have your submission that's been incorporated into the record. All of the commissioners have reviewed that document. Again, from my perspective, at least for tonight, the charge from the board is rather straightforward and rather limited in scope. And it basically gives us three options, one of which is to extend the program. A second option would be to extend it for a finite period of time as opposed to indefinitely. Or we could recommend that the current regulation, I believe, be extinguished, so to speak. But if the recommendation is that the regulation be extended or that the sunset be extinguished, so to speak, the issue can still be raised either at the board level, the village board or village council level, or through the PCZBA at some point in the future, I think when the timing may be appropriate.
In all due respect, it seems like you're just passing the buck. I mean, you guys have a lot of power, you have a lot of control, you could set the standard, and, you know, what's going on? Okay, you're gonna make it permanent? Okay, people are gonna be fined $5,000 for having someone over one night? I'm sorry, but that's a little ridiculous. I don't know. You know, I think you're just playing, let's bounce the ball, whose court is it in, instead of making a decision. And you know you are. Well, you know, come on.
Any questions from the commissioners for Ms. Harvin? Okay. Any further comments from the
How would
public
you like
generally?
it if a neighbor said to you, hey, I don't like that you have a daycare at your house. I don't like cars coming in and out. That's not part of the rules. And they went and signed a petition that, no, too many strangers. I mean, what would you do? Does this person have that much power? What's going on here? This is a property right. I'm fine where I am. Remove me from the equation if you need to in order to make it real. I mean, why can't someone who's renting an apartment that the landlord allows them to have a guest over? Why can't they do it? You're making a regulation that is elitist and discriminates. It's black and white. Who is holding you to not move forward? I'm sorry. I hope I'm not being disrespectful, but it just doesn't make sense to so many people, including the Liberty Justice Center, including the Goldwater Institute, including lawyers. So who's a lawyer here? Benjamin, can you speak to this issue?
Mr. Schuster?
I guess, Chair Peters, is there a question you would like me to answer?
Well, tell me how home sharing is a property right. The Supreme Court says it is a property right. What seems to be the problem then in Lake Bluff it's not?
Well, the village has authority to set zoning regulations, and the village has determined that up until this point that it was prudent to have the regulations it's adopted and the policy that it's adopted. The village has that authority. Now,
so the Constitution doesn't stand. The Goldwater Institute doesn't stand. The Liberty Justice Center in Chicago doesn't stand. Tell me how that it's prudent. Can you please tell me by law how it's prudent? And I hope somebody's watching. Or is it just that neighbor has more political power? Come on.
Ms. Arvin, we're going to allocate 1 more minute for your presentation. We're not trying to be rude, but...
That's okay. I have nothing more to say. I wrote it. You know, you'll do what you choose to do.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
You're welcome, most certainly. All right, commissioners. I know that you've all reviewed the packet. You've reviewed the guidance that we've received from the Council of the Whole. we've had input from Ms. Harvin. Apparently, there's no other input from the public this evening. I'm not totally surprised by the lack of public comment tonight. But again, my thought is we address this within the strict confines of what was asked to us by the Committee of the Whole. And so, Mr. Russell.
May I? Oh,
Certainly.
sorry. Member Ryder, I see George might be, I don't know if he's occupied or not.
Actually, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Member Russell, if you can hear us but you can't speak, you'll have to hit either *6 or *9 on your phone, on the phone dial pad. Or that works too.
I'm sorry. I am needing to walk away from the screen, so that's why I'm listening over the phone. I'm listening to the meeting over the phone. So when I walk away from the screen, I'm here, Susan. Just to let you know.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks.
Russell.
Chair Peters, if I could be recognized.
Certainly.
I want to speak to this because I have given this particular issue a great deal of thought. I know we give all of the issues a great deal of thought, but I particularly focused on this and really spent time looking at what other jurisdictions have done over the last several years. It was a very hot issue in 2017, 18, into 19. You could find all kinds of discussion online about it then. And then after that, it seems to have settled down. I note that when we passed the ordinance 3 years ago, we did so as a pilot for 2 years with the express intention of revisiting the results of the pilot. And as of 2 years, and making adjustments thereafter. And after 2 years, we had very little information, and we were in the middle of a pandemic, or the beginning of a pandemic, and so we adjourned and pushed it off another year, as I believe I voted for and was the appropriate thing to do at the time. And I fully appreciate the passion with which people address this issue. Maybe not as fully as those of you who were on the board 3 years ago, because I certainly wasn't, but I can appreciate the heat of the issue. I, however, think that the difficulty, even if the issue is difficult and the passions are high, that doesn't give us a reason to do nothing. It actually calls us forward to do something, which is, easy for me to say, having not lived through it. I recognize that. But just when the passions are so high, I think that's when we're called upon to lead, as will the village board be as well. So I've looked at the ordinance and looked at what other jurisdictions have done, and I went on Airbnb to see what I could find. And here's something that I found that I think is worth thinking about. Even though we are saying we have an absence of information, we actually have information, two pieces of information that we shouldn't ignore. One is that the restrictions right now are so great that people are disincented from doing this. We know that. And two, that other surrounding communities are doing this successfully. And here's the reason I think we have to pay attention to this. If not now, then in a year, not 2 years. I think we have to pay attention to this because it is another issue on which business is concerned. You can argue about the pros and cons as to how much business a short-term renter would bring to the community, but it would bring some business. When I Googled around on Airbnb, or I looked around on Airbnb, I found just over the border in Lake Forest a place I could rent for 2 nights. In East Lake Forest, not a mile from my house. And I can't tell the exact address because it doesn't say, but I could rent it for 2 nights. And you know what they advertised? Come to Lake Forest and walk to our downtown community and go to our shops and go to our restaurants and spend your vacation dollars here. So I think it is disingenuous to say that there are only negatives to bringing in short-term renters. I understand that there's negatives to it, but there aren't only negatives. There are positives. So in order to be business friendly, I think you really need to do what you can to encourage people to come to the community, encourage people who actually might stay and see this community and decide to buy here. And perhaps that happens once or twice a year, or maybe not even that often. Nonetheless, it's a marginal improvement. So I'm tempted by the peace argument. I'm very tempted by it. I had signs, across the street from my house that I looked out every day. I don't want signs again. But I do think we've learned some things. We've learned that other communities have done this successfully, that the temperature has nationwide calmed a bit. And 3, that what we did before needs to be adjusted. And I am willing to consider pushing that off for another year, even though I think we ought to address it now. But I definitely don't want to sunset it or to remove the sunset altogether, because as we've seen with Block 3, once you put something in writing, it's very hard to turn around and change that. It's written apparently in stone. So I think we definitely should not remove the sunset. I think we should extend it, if at all, for a year, but my preference would be to take it to workshop. And you guys can play this video for me in 6 months and tell me I told you so if it really becomes difficult, as it might. But I think that's our job. And that's the job of the village board as well. So a few tweaks. I think we have to look at the 5-foot restriction on the driveway. I think we have to. And I would say I would say distance between houses matters. If somebody's encroaching on the right of way or somebody's encroaching on the setback, that matters. If somebody's house is basically a townhouse with yours because it's so close, that matters. But where their driveways happen to be should not matter. And indeed, the way it's written, somebody could actually move their driveway closer to their neighbor's house in order to shut them down, which I think we really don't want to have an arbitrary rule such as that. I would recommend changing that rule to shared driveways. Someone that has a shared driveway, then I can understand the need. Or I would say if someone is within 20 feet of their neighbor's wall. I'm picking 20 feet without having measured anyone. But understanding that noise dispute is a real concern for people who are very close to one another. I just think that the 5 feet or the rule on the adjacent driveways is arbitrary, and we need to come up with a rule that makes sense, which is the distance between houses. I think this is going to take courage to reopen. As I said, a few months from now, may wish that I took a different position, but I would vote to open the issue, and at the very most, go to a year extension with the notion that a new board, village board, election is coming up, as I think you mentioned, Chair Peters, and this may be an issue that the voters ought to vote on. So that's where I stand. Thank you. I appreciate the monologue there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'd like to chime in. Member Ryder, I agree with almost everything you said. I was part of the original group putting this together. There was a little bit of interesting dynamic between the board and the planning commission about how we were to approach this. And what I think we ended up with, and I was not at all happy with it, in particular that its reason for being was to gather information, is that we put something together that was just so burdensome that I believe that we weren't going to get any real good information, that what happened was going to happen, is that not many people were going to do this. And so I found it to be quite a failure. And I think we need to say to ourselves, do we want to do this or not? Because I don't think we really made that decision 3 years ago. We said we have to put something out here, so here's something out here that's going to be very benign and not do anything. And I think at some point, I totally agree with you. We need to make the decision to say either just be done with this and we're not going to do short-term rentals. Let's not pretend to do it though. And if we are going to do it, we want to do it, we need to go back and we need to look at the data that we have from our community, from other communities, understand the benefits to business, also understand the risks. As you said, there's pros and cons to this. And so I totally agree that we should put, no more than a 1-year timeline to this. It's certainly going to be the board's burden to decide when they want to restudy this or when we could put it on our agenda, but that doesn't make any sense. They should send it down to us and say, we need to look at this. My thought would be that we do a 1-year timeline or 1-year deadline to give them some flexibility to determine when the right time is to have that workshop, and give us and the community plenty of time to study it. That being said, I don't want to create an overly dramatic and lengthened out version of drama too. So hopefully the board will consider that and think about something that it's something that we do need to study and prioritize that soon. I don't think it's something we should discuss tonight. So I think we do extend it for a 1-year maximum. But I'd be open to shorter timeframes, but I just don't want to pressure the board into putting this too early before they're ready.
Thank you, Member Burns. Member Russell.
If I remember correctly, we did give specific recommendations to the board and they didn't abide by what we decided that we wanted to do. As you said, David, there's been this contentious, we say this, they say that. We recommend this, they don't agree with that. I still go back to the idea that this is a board decision. We can give them the data, which we have done ad nauseum on lots of issues. Marijuana was the other issue. They'll do what they really want to do. I agree that the community should have input into this, and I recommend again, I think we should have a referendum sometime and just see what the community wants. If the community votes for this, then we'll put the proper regulations in place. If the community doesn't want it, then it's a done deal. I think we got to see what our neighbors want to do, not just us, not just the board. I propose a referendum to the village saying about short-term rentals to be done, and use that as our decision to go forward or not. And we can put a 1-year time frame for that to be done. Because we can make all the recommendations there are out there. If the board's not into this, it's not going to go anywhere, and we've wasted so much time like we have in the past. That's my opinion.
No, thank you, Member Miller. I think we did address the possibility of a referendum at one point during the preceding 3 or 4 years. Obviously, there never has been a referendum, but the record will certainly reflect that that is a topic for further consideration by the village council.
One more statement to make. Because of the last year, the COVID, nothing can be counted as normal. We really haven't had 2-year hiatus of seeing what the data shows. Nobody's renting anything as they shouldn't. So if we do go a year, maybe we should go 2 years and see as this pandemic winds down, if there really is a need as well for short-term rentals. I mean, I would think even a 2-year extension would be appropriate with the idea that in a year, if there's enough people who want it, we can do it then.
No, thank you, Member Miller. Member Fisher.
I think, well, I'm hearing a lot that I would agree with from all three of them. I do think that COVID has taken an impact. Obviously, I wasn't on the board at the time, although I did participate as just a resident. I did expect that there was going to be research that was generated from the first 2-year pilot program. I'm not sure that that ever really, since nothing came of it, I'm not really sure we had research, but I would be really curious to know I think there were 5 that took place before we started legislating. I'd love to know why they weren't able to do it. I think, as Member Burns said, it simply was so cumbersome that it became a non-viable. You simply couldn't comply with it and make it make any sense. So I'd probably be more inclined to say the 1-year time frame, open to the idea of a referendum if this group feels that that's best. I'm not an expert on that by any means, but certainly getting more information on what the community feels about it. I agree with all that. So a 1-year extension would be my preference. And then definitely a review after that.
Thank you, Member Fisher. Thank you. Member Russell.
Just a couple comments. I'm generally in agreement with what's been said so far, and I'm in favor of just a 1-year extension, not a permanent extension. I particularly agree with Member Ryder's comment about the 5-foot separation required on the driveways. That was, in my view, a silly regulation to begin with. I'm convinced that a lot of the regulations in the ordinance do make sense, though. A lot of them relate to public safety. I'm personally of the opinion that, prior to COVID, and the year prior to COVID, that the reason why perhaps people that were renting out their places didn't continue is because some of these folks literally felt demonized. They were so heavily criticized that they just didn't think it was worth it, not because the regulations are so burdensome. So I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Member Russell. I guess over the years, my philosophy toward short-term rentals has never changed. I've always been an opponent of that sort of business, so to speak. I don't necessarily believe that there's any tremendous benefit to the community. I don't necessarily believe that there's any tremendous benefit to the near neighbors of any of those facilities. I do believe that there is a potential risk for decreased property values. And I've never felt that this sort of business, if you want to call it a business, comports with the historical philosophy of this community. That said, the community obviously is evolving and continues to evolve. And I think that the upcoming elections may reflect where the community may be evolving to. I don't know, but it is possible. And so from my perspective, without getting into the merits any further, I would not be opposed to a 1-year extension, also raising the possibility that the Village Council strongly consider a referendum sometime within the next 12 months in an effort to fully gauge the community's philosophy toward this. Because if such a program is expanded, I think it'll be very, very difficult to ever rein it in, and it could be a very significant change in the complexion of the village. That said, any further discussion?
I just have one more comment. One of the pillars of our plan, I believe it was the 2017 plan, definitely the comprehensive plan, has been to be a welcoming community. And I think to the extent we want to kid ourselves that we are, and yet have a statute that basically, as much as bans short-term rentals, I think that is not consistent with our historical philosophy. I think what we aim to be, what we aspire to be, is a welcoming community, not one that would shun others, or make it more difficult for my family to come to my son's graduation next week, for example. So I appreciate everyone's perspective. Maybe I'm backing my way into a referendum right now because this issue is going to be an issue, obviously, on the April 6th ballot. So thank you for considering it. If it's the desire of this body, I would agree to a one-year extension. Certainly nothing further. Appreciating that I do think it needs to be discussed, but we can kick it down the road just a little bit farther. I'm hoping that we can get some information and some genuine dialogue, not just from the most heated participants in the community. That's the problem, right? We need a conversation that involves people who aren't on the extremes, who can find a middle ground and some room for peace in the middle. So.
No, thank you, Member Ryder. Mr. Cole just reminded me that Member Danley had some comments that she submitted, and we want to get that into the record.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, typically, if this was, if we received this earlier, we would circulate it in advance. If we were together in person, I would give you a printed copy at the dais to read. Again, this is relatively late breaking that Ms. Danley was unable to join us, and she expressed her apologies to me before the meeting, but I'll just read this verbatim. Hello, Glenn. I'm not going to be able to make our meeting tonight. My apologies. I would like to mention my thoughts on agenda item number 6, short-term rental regulations. I would vote to continue the public hearing for a date to be determined. Reason being, as I look through the many regulations, there is a sense of complication and excessive regulations that seems to interrupt the flow. By keeping it status quo, we may continue to have problems. And is that our goal? A few examples that are apparent and in need of further discussion and perhaps clarity. And this is a bulleted list. Remove adjacent driveway definition. Note the difference in regulations between owner-occupied renting, parentheses, home sharing, and whole house rentals. Question homeowner rights. Question the large insurance and fire technology. Is it excessive? Question annual fee. What do other municipalities charge? Does it have to be annually or a one-time fee? Question how we can have tax benefit with the short-term rental in our community. And question why do we need to fine and who is policing this rule? So that's at the end of the list. So the question remains, what is excess versus warranted? Can we come up with a revised short-term rental plan that can work with our village and village staff? All the concerns are amplified because, in my opinion, the regulations seem rather excessive. Based on my preliminary scope and reading all of the previous minutes and the committee of the whole objective, I would vote to continue and to hopefully improve our short-term rental program in Lake Bluff. Thank you, Jill Danley.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Any further discussion among the commissioners? It seems, from my perspective, that there's general agreement with respect to a one-year recommended extension. There's some push for perhaps a referendum, or at least the consideration of a referendum. But is there any further discussion? And if not, is there a motion?
I move to recommend a one-year extension to the ordinance.
Thank you, Member Burns. Second by Member Fisher. Any further discussion? Hearing none, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Member Miller,
Aye.
Member Burns,
Aye.
Member Fisher,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Member Ryder,
Aye.
and Chair Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, staff report.
Certainly. Just one moment here as we switch gears. So just a short list this evening. Happy to answer any questions or discussion, but mostly just wanted to make sure some items were brought to your attention, that you're being kept in the loop. So, of course, Ms. Deb Fisher has been appointed to the Plan Commission. The Historic Preservation Commission is still looking at changes to their regulations. You'll recall that you made a recommendation necessary for that work last fall that went to the board and then was referred back, and it sounds like maybe concluding or working towards some changes that would go back to the board. So again, there's been a series of listening sessions over the last month or so, and so stay tuned if you're interested in that. That's an important part of our residential policies, looking at the comprehensive plan here in the village. Also, at the Committee of the Whole recently, the board discussed a number of business support initiatives, and one of them that we're looking at preliminarily is design changes to the street in the central business district. I think there will be more discussion and more opportunities to deliberate about that coming up in the future, and as those occur, we'll keep you informed about them, but wanted to share the memorandum and at least one concept that looks at essentially if you have the trade-off of making part of the CBD one-way, Scranton Avenue, in front of the bicycle shop and in front of the the post office and et cetera, that would give you additional sidewalk space, additional parking on the street for some of the parking concerns you've heard from business owners and et cetera. And so we are evaluating those as part of this upcoming capital project. And then a bit of a look ahead for the next few months. Again, you'll remember in the fall, we had a good amount of discussion around accessory dwelling units, and our thought was to pause that discussion for a bit and look towards a joint workshop, perhaps with the Architectural Board of Review, the Village Board, et cetera, when we had some scale drawings, some examples to show. I can say we still are working on this, but I'll give you just a little sneak peek that I think we have. We're working on some real razzle dazzle to share, if that is the term of art, with you in March. If my screen sharing will cooperate. There we go. So we have a very capable architect / planner that's been putting together a number of these site plans based on, you might recognize this, you might not. We won't name names, but these are based on one or two, in each case, real parcels in the village, and so we've tried to keep this very close to the ground truth, if you would, in looking at some creative ways that the rules that this group has drafted and worked through can be used in practice. So we're excited about that. And then other changes coming down the road. There's a couple of really code adjustments that have made perhaps the need to evaluate them known in the last few months. One is how we define lot width and front yards and irregular lots. That comes from the Arden Shores subdivision discussion. Another is how we treat attics for floor area ratio. There's some discussion there. We're hoping to continue to bring and finish out some administrative cleanup in larger parts of the code that you might see in the coming months. And then finally, I would expect in the summer, even though COVID makes the public engagement piece of this hard, I think we're overdue to return to some of this body's work on the comprehensive plan, and we'll try to bring that forward and bring that to a conclusion. So again, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Glenn, what's the status of actually moving the Arden Shore subdivision to the village board? What's the anticipated date as of right now?
Certainly, that may or may not be on the board meeting, excuse me, Monday night for first reading consideration. So in consultation with the village attorney and the different parties to the subdivision, and that might be purchasing it afterward, we wanted to wait until a few more details were worked out on their end, especially around the access easements. Some of those have come back today for our review, and so we're just waiting to see if and to what extent those need to be further refined before they go to the board. But again, no complications with the subdivision or with the sale. We expect it's still proceeding as intended by the parties, just nailing down these last details before we begin the final approval process.
Any other questions directed to Mr. Cole? Agenda item number 8, Commissioners Report. Hearing no discussion. Any other issues for the commission? Well, congratulations to Commissioner Fisher for working her way through her first meeting, and we're glad you're on board, Deb. That's a tremendous asset, tremendous addition to the group. Any further discussion before we close? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
How was that, Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Still have to learn the sights and sounds of our new commission.
Sorry.
All right, could we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Member Burns.
Aye.
Member Fisher.
Aye.
Member Miller.
Aye.
Member Ryder.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
And Chair Peters.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Stay safe and stay healthy out there. And we'll see you next month.
Thank you, guys.
Two.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.